Hi, this is Ned Siegfried from Siegfried and Jensen. As proud sponsors of BeliefCast, we hope you are inspired by Todd's weekly podcasts, which contain so many courageous stories of recovery and personal growth. Remember, it's not what happened in the past that matters, it's what happens in the future. We invite you all to work hard and be optimistic about your future. Enjoy today's podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Inspires BeliefCast. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I love you guys. Thank you for believing in me and supporting this. It means the world, and it's because of you that we've got so many people now that are listening and downloading these episodes. It's helped so many people, and we just can't thank you enough for supporting this. I got to give a shout out to my sponsors, Maury Nutrition. They have a drink called Calm that helps people struggling with anxiety. And they're the official drink of the BeliefCast now, which is really cool. They're a great company. And Wasatch Recovery, Siegfried and Jensen, and Thread Wallets. All amazing companies doing great things in this community. And I can't thank them enough for sponsoring me and being a part of this great cause. So today we're joined by a very special person to me and my family, actually. Baylee Demars. Baylee, thank you for being here.
Oh, Todd, thank you. We are kind of like family. We
Right?
go way back.
Yeah, we go way back. Matter of fact, we just lived like one door away from each other.
Yes.
On Seagull Lily, right?
Yep, Sandy, Utah.
So I've known you from the time you were born, honestly, up until now, and we love your family. We really do, and I've always was so impressed with you. Just kind of the way you carried yourself, even as a young kid. And I think you know what I'm talking about. You were just something different about you. You weren't afraid to just speak your mind. You were always trying to be better. You're always trying to help people. It was, even just as a kid, I mean, you were inspiring me as an adult going, man, who is this girl? Right?
Well, thank you. And you have seen into my personal family challenges.
Sure.
And we'll talk about that. But I have just such fond memories at your house. I remember, when my parents maybe had to go to work early, I would walk over and your wife would do my hair for school.
Yeah.
And I remember being in your basement watching the news when September 11th happened. Like, that's a core memory for me.
I remember that. You were there.
Yeah. So we really do go way back.
Yeah.
I'm the same age as your son, Shayla.
Yeah.
And I, played with your girls and, you ended up moving, but you moved into the same neighborhood. So we've stayed connected up until I left to go to college.
Well, yeah. And then I've been, my family follows you on social media and all the good things you're doing. You're married. Yeah. You got one on the way. Is that okay to say that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've got two little boys and finally a little girl coming. So life has changed.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I want to give a little background. You currently hold the title of Miss Utah America. How cool is that?
It still doesn't feel real to hear you say that. Yeah.
That is so amazing, right? You've competed in Nationals Miss America pageant this past August. You graduated with a bachelor's degree in dental hygiene and spent time serving in your church in Spain, where you became fluent in Spanish, right? You enjoy scuba diving. You've traveled to 21 countries around the world. You're married to the love of your life, McKay, and together you own six doors of real estate and have a goal to invest in more properties before turning 30.
Yeah, I got one more year.
So very ambitious, right? Again, there's a lot of other things that we could say, but I want to have you share those things with us. But why don't we start with tell our listeners a little bit about your childhood and growing up.
Well, honestly, hearing you list off those things feels surreal because as I reflect on my childhood, if you would have told me at that time that I would accomplish those things, I would have had a hard time believing you.
Yeah.
And that's what this podcast is about is beliefs and what you believe about yourself. And so I'll talk about, how those beliefs have changed for me over the years, particularly about my own identity.
Yeah.
But so growing up, I was the only child for 8 years, 7.5 years.
Yeah.
And, that's when I became really close with your kids because I just longed for
Yeah.
a sibling. And,
Right.
and my parents struggled with fertility.
Yeah.
And, I didn't understand that as a kid, but now being a mother myself, I have so much more empathy for
Yeah.
the miscarriages. And, I actually was a twin and my parents lost my twin. And so that's given me a little more insight into what later happened, which is once my sister finally was born, they divorced about a year later.
Yeah.
And, that's their story, but I'm sure, there were so many things that played into that, the infertility, the personal struggles.
Yeah.
And so I was so grateful when I finally got that sister.
Yeah. Well, I think the world of both your parents always have, and we, everyone goes through struggles, and it's tough to see people you care about struggle. And, and you went, you obviously were there and seeing the struggles, and that's tough to watch. But at the same time, good people, as you well know. I want to talk a little bit. You were different, and what I mean by that is, and I say that as a compliment, as a child, like you were very like, I don't know, is faithful the word? I mean, you believe, maybe belief is the word. You had such a powerful belief, like if I do this, this will happen. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you for acknowledging that. And I nod to agree because I believe that God gave me some gifts beyond my own power.
Yeah.
Because I needed it. Because,
Yeah.
I had to become so independent when my parents divorced because my mom ended up going back to work and school. So she left 7 a.m. I got home at 11 p.m. at night. And that was for years. And then I kind of took on that role of caretaker for my younger sister, who was so much younger than me.
Yeah.
And we, had babysitters from around the neighborhood from time to time. But at the end of the day, they relied on me a lot. And I ended up having to sacrifice a lot of my own identity, my own interests and goals to take care of my sister, which I think has contributed to my love of motherhood so much.
Yeah, right.
But, because I didn't have the confidence of developing skills and talents like my friends around me, I really relied a lot on the belief of who I was, which was, and my belief is a daughter of God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that I was placed in that neighborhood for a specific reason because the people I was around, both my age and the adults, really took me under their wing. And so that was my stability. Even when my parents, I was being tossed between 2 households multiple times a week.
Right.
And, my friends at school, had certain things to say about, broken families. And I just kind of felt like maybe there was something wrong with me. But the one thing I do know is I feel good when I go to church and when I'm around these people. And so when you say that I was different, I think that was what God knew that I needed to survive and make it out of that time of my life without, crashing and burning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think you're right. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure obviously you had your own struggles and your own challenges. How did you get through those moments? Maybe when you felt, like you said, you felt alone, especially before Oakley was born. And like, how did you deal with that? And how did you make it through it?
Well, at the beginning, not in a great way. I was a kid, but I remember I just got so insecure, so insecure, especially, I didn't have any physical accomplishments and athleticism or anything like that. And I was decently smart in school, but I think, you become a teenager, and I became very critical of myself. I hated myself physically. I thought I was
Really?
the ugliest person.
Really?
Yeah. I hid behind, if you look back at pictures, I hid behind these really thick glasses. And I remember feeling like I was just blank without them. I just was hiding, you know, because
Okay.
I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. You know, I could do well on a school test, and I could take care of my sister, but I'm like, what else?
Yeah.
And so I just felt like what I relied on was my dreams. I dreamt of one day shining in some way, you know, and I was a terrible singer. I couldn't pick up instruments. I could not do well in sports, but I dreamt that I would, and I spent all my time just dreaming. And finally in high school, I started kind of changing my belief about myself and took off those glasses and you know, took little steps to get out of my comfort zone by you know, doing some student government and trying out for the tennis team and just trying things. And I think that was kind of what established a pattern that I developed later in my life, which is, you know, you just do little things to eventually become, you know, better and more than you think you are.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, it's funny because, you know, looking from the outside in, you know, I never would have thought that about you. I thought, man, this is the most confident kid. And because, again, you were very vocal. It felt like, at least, you know, from what I witnessed. But I think you're right. I think all of us on some level, we pretend a lot of times that everything's fine. But inside we're going, oh, right?
Yes, we all do.
And I think it's pretty common for, obviously, kids especially. But then you have other challenges you throw in there. But boy, you sure really prevailed, and you're a very driven person. You know, we mentioned obviously you're Miss Utah America 2023. How did that all start playing a part, and how has your challenges that you've been through helped you in that area?
Yeah, it has everything to do with it because like I said, I did not think much of myself, but I dreamt. And so my senior year, I entered the Miss Sandy pageant because I had seen people I really admire do that and have a chance to shine. And I went to a few rehearsals and they said, okay, so what's your talent? And then, you know, deer in headlights. I'm like, here we go again. Here I am not measuring up. I don't have anything to offer. Like, what worth do I have? And so I dropped out. And you know, and I should mention in the meantime, you know, my parents have been divorced for several years about that point.
Right.
And I don't need to go into their personal details, but I will acknowledge the reality it had on me, which is that my mom started to, you know, develop habits and turn to things that were addictive, which is something that you know very much about.
Yeah.
And you know the effects that has on loved ones. And they don't intend to hurt anyone else, but it becomes very harmful. Yeah. And so, you know, that relationship with my mom became not only non-existent, but became very harmful. Sure. And so, you know, I had a transition from high school to college kind of on my own. And my dad, you know, my relationship with him was, there were so many years that I wanted him to be something that he wasn't. Yeah. And so then I was bitter toward him. And then about that same time, that senior year, you know, when I realized, okay, my relationship with my mom is not good, I started just accepting my dad for who he was, and he and I became the best of friends, and we still are. And he's going to listen to this, and I want him to know how important his relationship with me has been, because, you know, even though we have different lifestyles, you know, he helped me by just believing in myself. He was always the one to remind me to believe in myself when I didn't. And so that led me to make good choices that, you know, brought me good things in my life, which was to serve people in my church, to go to Spain in the mission that I served. And that led to, coming home, getting a great degree, meeting my husband, because I started believing that I was worth more. And and he is the most amazing man in the world, I think.
Yeah.
I joke, but sometimes I say if anyone realized how great he was, they would murder me so that they could get to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not kidding. Like, he is the most incredible man. And
that's awesome.
But I had dated people before that who, saw me for coming from a broken family and didn't contribute to me believing in myself. And I'm really grateful that I took the leap to believe a little bit more in myself, that I believed I could be worthy of someone so great as my husband, because now my life, everything good in my life is because of him.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about how that led me to do Mrs. Utah America is, I accomplished so many things. I got married, I graduated, I learned a new language, and then I became a mom, which is something I dreamt of too,
Yeah, right.
So many little girls dream of that. And I dreamed of how I would do things a little bit differently. Everyone does,
Sure.
take the best from their families
and make it better.
And, I had so much experience already with my little sister, and I'm like, I can't wait to do that on my own. But will I be able to? My parents, struggled.
Yeah.
And so I was terrified that I would be infertile and that I would have those same pains that my parents had.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was able to have my first baby, and that was a miracle. Crazy story. I mean, he was born premature and almost on a plane because he came so early. I wasn't anticipating that. So I was on my way to the airport when I went into labor with him.
Oh, really?
And I was in another state. And so we just had to Google a hospital.
Oh, man.
Get off the freeway, go have a baby out of state.
Oh,
so that was, traumatic.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so I remember after he was born, he ended up being okay. We had to treat him in the NICU for a little bit, but he was okay. And I saw that, I then my identity became a mom, and I was like, okay, well, I need to remind myself what I am personally worth besides just the title of a mom, which is the most amazing title, but who am I again? I had to rediscover that. And that's something I've learned. You don't just kind of reach a point where you've made it and then you know who you are the rest of your life and you're great,
Right.
Like, you have to go through cycles of reminding yourself who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
And so I had seen someone on Instagram, an influencer who I admired. Her name on Instagram is Ballerina Farm. Her real name is Hannah Neeleman. And I saw that she was competing for Mrs. Utah, and she won. And she had several kids, I think 6 at that time.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I was like, wait, you can be married and you can do a pageant. And pageants appeal to me just because not only do you get some stage time, which is something I never had, but you also get a chance to do good. You have a platform that you are giving back. And so I like the dual benefit of that.
Yeah.
And I saw her do it.
Awesome.
And I was like, okay, maybe that dream I had could be resurrected.
Wow. Very cool.
So, I mean, what led me to actually doing it was after the trauma of that first birth, I was like, I'm ready to do this other birth, but be more in control, right? We always want to be in control and we want things to go our way.
Yeah.
So we were able to get pregnant again. And I was so excited, dreaming again, like I always do, just dreaming of that new baby. And, those thoughts that I always had about, your body's going to fail you, just like your mom, had those struggles. Those came and they manifested to be true. I got the terrible news that nobody ever wants to hear, that the baby no longer had a heartbeat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And And it's not uncommon. So many people get that news.
Yeah.
But for me, that was the worst thing I've ever experienced as far as a personal, like, it wasn't my parents. It wasn't, it was something,
Yep.
So close to home.
Wow.
And then I was like, those pageant dreams were pushed to the side. I was like, I need to like get through this. I need to, cope.
Well, yeah. And it's traumatizing, and it's, it's stuff, if you don't try to deal with that, it's just going to keep lingering, festering. And so it's probably good you did put that on the back burner for a minute and focus on you, right? And work through that. What did you do to kind of deal with that?
Well, at first I, just wallowed, and I felt alone because it is so common, but it isn't talked about a lot because it's personal, and it makes others feel uncomfortable a lot of times because they don't know what to do. You can't do anything. They don't know what to say. And so I felt really alone, and I was like, well, I guess the solution is just to get pregnant again and try again. But that's terrifying. I don't want to experience it again.
Yeah, you don't want to go through that again, right?
Yeah, and so we did get pregnant again. And that was not an enjoyable pregnancy because you're just thinking of the worst case scenario the whole time. But you were longing for result.
9 months is long enough, but then when you're worried about that, it probably made it seem way, way longer.
Yeah, it did. So we decided, one coping mechanism was we decided not to find out the gender, and part of that was, I don't want to get too attached.
Really? Okay.
Because, I don't want to give up a piece of my heart again, but it's like, no matter what, you're going to be hurt. But, but that was something to like keep us looking forward to something, there's anticipation building for the gender reveal at birth.
Right.
and so he fortunately was born. It was a boy. And that was such a happy moment. When my husband was able to tell me that news, I just delivered this baby, and it went so much smoother than the first time. And he said, it's a boy. And oh my goodness, I'm a boy mom. I just have 2 boys. And I thought that would heal me and to have a healthy baby, but it didn't, which is something that surprised me because, I kind of just thought, getting pregnant again would be the solution. But I didn't ever take the time to work through those feelings.
Right.
And so I found myself, again, even though I had this healthy baby and 2 kids, I'm like, I'm still feeling empty in a way. There's still something missing. And that's when, I gave birth in June, and then in September, I was reminded about the pageant. And the signups were coming up, and I'm like, maybe this is going to help me direct that energy into something positive. And maybe my platform, because in the past I was like, what could my platform be? Well, I'm a dental hygienist. Maybe I can promote oral health. But that was like not calling my heart, I'm like,
that doesn't quite have the oomph to it, right?
Yeah. I'm like telling people to floss, they're not going to love me for that.
Totally.
But I was like, you know what? I think there's more work to be done for people who experience what I just experienced. And so that's what really was like, okay, I'm not just doing this pageant to fulfill an old dream now. I'm doing it because I want to make things better for others.
Make a difference, Is that what you called Before the Rainbow? Is that the platform?
Yes.
Is that the name of what you called it?
Yeah, because of that, like, before you wait for that rainbow, you have to address the storm. You can't just hope that there's this Band-Aid to put over something and it'll make it all better, because, you still need to heal. Yeah. And so that's like my goal, is to just help people address that time period, because some people don't get a rainbow baby in the way that they want. but there's still healing that can be had.
For sure.
And so it's been really amazing, to pursue that goal.
Yeah. So what do you do with this platform? Like, is it just, is it an educational, just trying to educate women through this, or is it giving them resources and where to get help, or all the above?
Yeah, there are 3 things that I've been trying to drive home, which is community, compassion, and conversation. So, community is to, gather people who have experienced it. So like you, I tried to make a podcast, and it's been going really well, just connecting and trying to form that community when you don't know where or who else has experienced it. To, there's so much power in knowing you're not alone.
Yeah.
And hearing others' experiences and validating and getting their advice. And so that's one leg of it. And the other leg is conversation, just talking about it more, because like I had said, I didn't really know who had experienced it because it wasn't talked about. And so just being more open about it.
Yeah.
And it, perhaps more in a public setting. Like, I took on the title when I signed up as Mrs. Vineyard, which is where I lived.
Okay.
And so the 6 months of preparation before the pageant, I was using to use my voice and talk about it and let people know that this happens, that it, is valid, and that doesn't need to be dismissed. We don't need to make people feel like they're being dramatic when they need to grieve. And then, and that the whole goal is to develop more compassion, because if people feel compassion when they go through something, any trial, and this one in particular, which is losing a pregnancy or an infant, then that goes so far.
Right. Yeah. Compassion's huge, because, and then I think where you feel the compassion, like you mentioned, is when you're actually communicating with someone, talking to someone who's been through what you've been through, right? How powerful that connection can be, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I love that you're doing that, because I think you saw a void in that, because you said it's so personal that a lot of people don't talk about it.
Right.
So I think that's great, and it's great that you're doing a podcast.
Yeah,
how's that been going?
It's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've heard you say in the past, it's not about you as the host what makes it great. It's about the guests. And
Yes.
I would argue that you are an amazing host, so you are what makes it
nice.
great. But
Thank you.
But I don't feel that I'm the star of that. I feel like I'm just so grateful for every guest who's willing to come and be vulnerable and share. And I cry with them. I've never met them before.
Right.
And I just feel so connected, and it just feels like such a sacred space, to get so personal into someone's life and learn together.
Wow. That's so cool you're doing that. So how long have you been doing the podcast now?
So I guess in those 6 months I was preparing for the pageant, I signed up for the pageant 3 months postpartum. So I was working on every element of my life. I was trying to get back in shape, which was amazing, because I know you do a lot in weightlifting.
Yeah.
And I've just learned the power of strength training and, getting the right nutrients and protein. And so that was the strongest I've ever been. I just had my second baby full term, and I was able to become the strongest and most lean self I've ever been. And that was empowering.
Yeah.
And then, I was working on being more outgoing and getting out of my comfort zone again, and getting in the community and developing relationships with new people. And then I was working on interview skills and being able to sit down and have conversations.
Yeah, right.
And then I was working on walking in high heels, and funny enough, my husband was the best coach in that. He was
I don't know how you do that. I'm telling you, that looks impossible.
Oh man. It just feels good to take a look at every element of your life and try to improve it and have a reason to.
Yeah.
that's why people sign up for marathons. They sign up for
Mhm.
competitions so that they have a date and a goal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of power.
Oh, there is. Yeah. Knowing that you're shooting for something, there's an end goal in mind. This is where I'm going.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. I've seen you do competitions and so I spent those 6 months doing that. And I told the judges, okay, if you give me the opportunity to be Mrs. Utah, I will make this podcast to, accomplish those 3 goals of mine. And so I started it. But I'm like, regardless, I'm going to do it. And
Yeah, right.
but I didn't actually intend on winning. Like I could envision me with that crown, that crowning moment, just like I had seen Hannah Neeleman receive. I could imagine that. But honestly, I felt like the journey was already my prize.
Yeah, right.
My husband told me constantly, you are just the best version of yourself right now. And I just felt, like I really was changing how I believed about myself.
Yeah.
Instead of believing I was so insecure and so incompetent, I became like more powerful and in control of what my life was doing. And so I didn't really mind if I won or not. I was just happy to be there and standing on that stage in a swimsuit, just so vulnerable. I just felt like, wow, I'd already won. And so when they, continued to announce who was getting further in those rankings and they kept calling me, I was just like, oh, okay, great. And then they called my name as the final winner, and I was like, wow, you gotta be kidding me. I didn't really think this far ahead. I just wanted to show up to this day.
Right.
And I did it. And so then the next day I hit the ground, or actually I had published some episodes right before like the competition, like the day before. I'm like, hey, I told the judges this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
They can look it up. This is a sample of what I've done, of these great stories that I've been able to reach. And then, so I was crowned in March. And so I've done every week since. So I think I'm 40 episodes deep.
That's awesome.
So, and I, like you, I'm sure when you first started, it was like, who's going to want to do this?
Yeah. Who's going to listen to this?
Yeah.
I had one listener. It was my wife at the beginning.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Yeah,
Appreciate
exactly. And so with each and every one, I'm just like so grateful that they're giving this a chance. And it's called the Butterfly Broadcast. So basically, I, like you, just want people to tell their story of growth from being a caterpillar when life was relatively normal to the chrysalis phase when it's ooey gooey, messy, dark, scary, and then when you come out on the other side and you're different and you're a butterfly, and butterflies don't see their own wings, so sometimes you don't see all the growth that you've had and the beauty and the changes you've made, but you're different. And that's just what I love to highlight in other people, because I've seen that butterfly pattern repeat in my life at different circumstances, and particularly with the child loss. And so it's been really neat to hear others, transform.
And it's probably also very healing for you at the same time, right?
Yes.
Because when I'm sitting here interviewing guests and stuff, and like even today, it's like, this is like, I'm the one winning here.
Yes.
Like, this is amazing to be able to sit here with you and just to see where you've come from, the things you've been through, both good or bad, or negative or positive, or whatever, however you want to look at it, but that you have been through some difficult times so you can be in a position to make a difference.
Right, exactly.
And I mean, 40 episodes is no joke. I heard a statistic a while ago that, there's a lot of podcasts out there, right? And less than 1% of them get to 100 episodes. Mm-hmm. So you're almost halfway there. Wow. And that's awesome. So stick with it, because I remember, I'll never forget, I was about episode 60. And I'm going, man, am I going to keep doing this? Like, how can I do more? I mean, 60, that's 60 people.
Yeah.
You think that's, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to fight through this. And I had people saying, yeah, keep going. And it was interesting. After I hit the 100 mark, it almost feels like this, topple effect. Things have just kind of snowballed from there. So stick with it. I'm going to tell you, because you'll have these thoughts of, no, keep going.
Well, I'm glad you kept going, because you're, 300 and plus,
Yeah,
almost 400
Yeah,
deep.
360 almost or something like that. But yeah, it blows my mind that I'm at 360 and I just post one a week. I don't try to go crazy.
Yeah.
But again, back to what you're doing is these stories need to be heard, and the more you're getting them out there, pretty soon you're going to have, you'll be like booked out with guests till, for 6 months. You'll be like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, like you.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
but I just, all I did was I was just consistent. That was it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I bring on great people like you. Seriously, like really, that's what it is.
Well, I'm sure you've felt this way, but I feel like there are two different benefits to it. It's beneficial for the guest because they're able to share things that maybe they can't in other settings and reflect, and it's beneficial for them to share the episode with people who might benefit from learning those things about them.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's also benefit to the stranger who doesn't know that guest, and they hear someone they've never met say things that they felt before.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, so many episodes that you've posted, I didn't know that person personally.
Yeah.
But listening to them, I could relate, and I could see, light at the end of the tunnel in my own situation. And so I just think that's what's so neat about this style of podcasting.
Yeah. No, it's so good. I'm glad you're doing that. What other plans do you have besides, got this podcast going, your Miss Utah America, you have children now, you got one on the way. Where do you see yourself, like maybe a few years from now? Like, what other big plans do you have in your mind?
Oh man, it's hard to think past tomorrow sometimes, but the podcast is something I've been able to personally contribute, and then I've partnered with the organization in Utah called Share Parents of Utah, and I want the whole world to know about them, particularly locals. It exists in the whole country, but the Utah chapter is really developed, and what they do is just outstanding. Every volunteer has experienced a loss of a pregnancy or an infant, and they just give their time to better the experience for those actively going through it. So if someone gets that bad news and they are at the hospital and they're about to deliver, a volunteer will come and hold their hand through it and take pictures and bring them like little memento gifts that just the hospital isn't prepared to do. The hospital has to do their thing.
Yeah.
But somebody who's been there, I wish I had more photos like this with my baby. Let me do that for you. Let me take molds of their hands and feet for you to hold forever.
Yeah.
And I've had the opportunity to do that, and let me tell you, that is, like I said, I'm going to use a word again, sacred. To be able to be a part of that for somebody else. And as bad as you wish that wasn't happening to them, it's going to happen. And if you can make that better for them, so they don't feel so alone and so that they don't have regrets.
Yeah.
And so, that's just one way that the organization volunteers. And so I foresee myself, doing that for quite a while, as long as I can, because a lot of volunteers say that's the way they can parent their child, is by giving back in that way. And I am currently pregnant right now, which brings on, I have to remind myself of this belief system that I developed, because I found myself crashing back down because everything that I had just gained control of, that like I was losing control of again, because I can't control that. My body is reversing basically what I just worked for, and it's creating a beautiful life. And but then I'm, also battling those fears again of losing this baby, and interviewing people every week about their loss, and not feeling like, oh, that's going to happen to the baby I'm actively growing right now. That's hard. And I've found myself, feeling little again. And I've had to remind myself what the steps were that I did to get, my high moment of winning Mrs. Utah. And so, I'm not going to pretend that just because I won that means everything is peachy.
Sure.
I'm struggling again, and I have to, hopefully get this baby here safely, and that's on me. And
is that part of the struggle? You're kind of still, again, going back to worrying about this and about the pregnancy and the baby being healthy.
Worrying
sure,
about
which makes
the
total
heartbeat
sense.
stopping again,
right.
And worrying about, my body failing this child. And then I also, the nature of the beauty industry is, to be in your best shape. And so it's hard to do that while you're actively gaining weight every single week, like, and even though that's not what matters,
it is challenging.
It is challenging. And so I've had to okay, what is my worth really based on? Is it based on, if I can fit into a size 0 dress? No, it's not. But as women, we struggle with that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer your question about what's the future, I think it's just going through this butterfly cycle again and again. I'll have highs and lows, but just remembering the highs that I've had, which were a choice. I had to choose to make the changes in myself to believe more of myself. And just continue that pattern, as my kids get older, and be an example to them and influence them like I was influenced by Ballerina Farms, like realizing that I am an influencer to these hopefully 3 little children. And they watch everything I do, how I talk about myself, how I talk about the world, what priorities there are.
Right.
And so, just continuing to hopefully become better. I can't think that my Mrs. Utah was the best time I've ever had and I'm peaking there. No, I got to keep getting better.
Yeah, your best work is ahead of you, for sure. If there's someone listening to you right now, Baylee, who's struggling, they're in a bad place, maybe they've lost an infant, or a child, or whatever it may be, what advice would you give that one person listening to you right now?
My advice, I could say so many things, but I really do believe in the power of community, finding somebody who will listen, and so you don't feel alone, because when we're in our darkest hours and we're alone is when things go bad. That's when we make bad choices, or we don't even choose, but we just get into a bad situation. And so it's so important that, you either seek it out. You can't always just wait for somebody to come to you. Sometimes you have to seek it out, but there are people who will stand by you and remind you of your worth, or just remind you that what you're feeling is normal, because like you said, infant loss, nobody wants to feel that, but there are people who do feel it. And so if you can talk to them, you'll see that, it'll hurt the rest of your life, but you'll be stronger to carry that pain.
Sure.
And so just don't think you have to do things on your own, because we're here on earth to be, together, and that's what life is really about.
I love it. Very, very well said. And honestly, a good place to go would be to listen to your podcast, because you're bringing on these people who've been through it.
Yes.
Right? Again, it's the Butterfly broadcast. Yep. Sorry, I said that right. But that would be a great resource for anyone who's lost someone, an infant, to listen to that, because you're bringing on people who've been through the same thing. It'll help you maybe build a little bit of that community you're talking about, and just know that you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would challenge any of the listeners right now who may be going through that, is to reach out to you,
please,
and to check out your podcast and subscribe to it, and and be a part of what you're doing there. And that, I mean, again, I'm impressed. You got 40 episodes. That's no joke. That tells me you're really pushing forward and doing some good things with it.
I'm grateful for the guests, and it's the end of right now is the end of the year, and you get those analytics, and it's just really fulfilling to see who it's reached. Yeah. And I don't care about the numbers. I'm not gaining from it. Financially or anything. I'm gaining my soul. Yeah, exactly. But it's so cool to see how many people it can touch. And my dad is one of my most faithful listeners.
That's awesome.
And he'll share it with his friends, and he's in a different stage of life right now, but even though it might not apply to you directly, I think there's so much value in just hearing about other people's experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How do people overcome hardships? It doesn't matter necessarily what it is. You don't have to be exactly, but anyone can gain from it. Yeah. Well, if someone wants to reach out to you, Baylee, and learn more about, the organization Share Parents of Utah, obviously connect with your podcast, maybe even know more about you and connect with you, and maybe learn more about pageants and all of that, what would be the best way for someone to do that?
So Instagram is a great way. My personal page is at Baylee Demars, and BayleeDemars, just my first and last name. And then I also have the Mrs. Utah America page, and I know pageants have a stigma, and everyone has seen Miss Congeniality, which is so fun. But I would challenge someone, particularly women who are in this stage of life, to seek it out, because it honestly was the catalyst to so much growth in my life. For sure. That it's not just a superficial thing about tiaras and hairspray. It really changed me. And I'm grateful.
Well, I don't think people appreciate all the hard work behind the scenes. Yeah. Right. That you go through to be even ready to do it. And so, it's a very growing and life challenging process that you went through.
Yeah. And all the women who've done it with me will tell you that too.
For sure. Well, it's very impressive. I've always been impressed with you, Baylee. Still am.
Ditto.
I love your family, so shout out to them. Hope they're doing okay if they're struggling. We love you and we care about you. I can't thank you enough. I mean, you are the easiest person to talk to. Like, seriously, that literally felt like 5 minutes.
I know.
But I can't thank you enough to being here, and I'm glad we connected again and reached out, and I'm excited for what you're doing, and I'll do my best to help promote what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I'll put the links, like I said, to all your stuff in the show notes, so people will be able to get right to it, when they listen to this. And so thank you, Baylee, for being who you are and making a difference in this world. It's really cool to watch.
Well, thank you for providing a platform for people to reflect upon those changes and be inspired to do more.
Absolutely. Well, there you go, folks. Baylee Demars, reach out to her, check out all the good things she's doing. If you know of someone or yourself have lost an infant, especially, go check out her podcast. It's the Butterfly Broadcast. Check that out and subscribe to it. You'll be inspired. Baylee is the real deal. She truly is. She really practices what she preaches, and I've always been impressed with her, as you well know, through this podcast. I've said a lot about that. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. I love you guys. Thanks for supporting me and this cause. It means more to me than I can even express in words. Thank you to my sponsors. And Baylee, one last thank you to you. You are the best. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, till next time, everyone. Take care.